Welcome to Thriving Tribesmen. My name is Kuri, your host, and I'm excited to be making this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about practical solutions to raising your standards in your relationships. In fact, a lot of you guys are part of the forced celibacy, or at least anti-forced celibacy movement, where we are saying no to sexless marriages. We're saying no to living in a life with a marriage that is subpar. I mean, your wives have not been showing up for you guys for so long, and it's time for you to make a stand. And some of it is just you raising your standards and understanding exactly what is it about this relationship that is of value from me, and how is it that how do I raise those standards so that this relationship is not only fulfilling for me, but it's fulfilling for everybody that's attached to this relationship. So that's including the whole family with the kids. So today we're going to explore some of that. I'm going to give you a three-step process, or at least for you to understand your worth and how to use that, and plus, you know, what it means for your relationship and going forward. And again, I'm hoping that by this end of this, it gives you enough of an idea of where you are within that relationship and what you need to work on in order to really just bridge the gap. Because a lot of you guys, there's this really lack of knowing what you're worth. And today we're going to really try and explore into a bit of that. So, uh, step number one, I think, for anybody that's trying to raise their value is actually knowing your worth. A lot of you guys don't understand your worth when it comes to even the market value of the dating market. So, if you think of the dating market, there'll be people that are single, and there'll be single women. And the value is dictated based off of many factors, for example. And so, for women, if you are about the age of 18 to about age of 30, youth is probably the most marketable thing that is valuable. You've soft skin, you know, very beautiful, long hair, healthy hair, all those things that are marketable. In fact, the biggest one, which obviously we don't see as valuable, but it's probably valuable in terms of procreation, that they're most fertile at that period of time. So the value of women basically comes from that, and it's in terms of dating. So yes, they might have good personality and everything else. That's not what I'm talking about here. And then when it comes to men, your ability to provide, your ability to have devotion, you being able to be consistently growing in terms of your personal growth, but also from a career perspective. When you're age of 18, your earning power is less than when you've hit 20 years. Now, if you're consistently progressing, by the time you age 40, you should be at a place where you're almost financially free. You've got certain levels of income. Again, I'm not saying that if you're on a job that doesn't offer you that doesn't mean that you've failed. It's just that means that you need to um, be succeeding in other areas in order for you to be valuable. So when it comes to a place where you find yourself sexless, sometimes people take you for granted, for the sense that they just assume because you're here and you're not making a fuss about the lack of sex, therefore you're always going to stay. And when you do, it doesn't force the other person to at least evaluate what they're doing and the consequences of you not being able to connect with them. They'll just allow, because you've lowered your standards, because you don't understand your worth, that okay, this person, you're going to try and fix them, and you're willing to stay for many many years in this forced celibacy situation. Because I've spoken to a few guys, some of them have been in it for 10, sometimes 15, and I think the extreme was almost 18 years they'd gone without actually having sex with their partner, but they're still with them. And there's this sort of mentality of, I'm like Rambo, I'm going to go through all this suffering, uh, I'm going to take on the world and go through all this suffering and wear it as some sort of badge of honor. And it's and I was speaking to a client recently, and I said to him that some people are willing to suffer and use that suffering as a source of validation, instead of actually really suffer through the process of fixing the relationship. And again, it just goes back down to that thing, like, what is your self-worth? If you don't feel like you're worth a relationship that's fulfilling, that is full of sex, that is full of excitement, then you're willing to settle for the suffering, which is absolutely nuts. And hopefully you can see why that having self-worth is, at least knowing your self-worth is extremely important. Because if you don't understand this bit here, you're going to find that it's going to be extremely difficult for you to change a sexless relationship, because the moment she puts up any resistance, especially to moving over to a fulfilling relationship, you're willing to settle for the suffering. So really understanding yourself, knowing your worth is important. And within a dating market, as soon as she's got kids and so on, it's really hard for her to find a partner that's going to be able to commit at the same levels of devotion, provision, everything like that. So for example, I'll give my relationship as an example. So we earn pretty good. I earn pretty good. I'm within at least 5% of the population. So um I'm considered a high earner, and I'm very devoted to my wife. Love her to bits. She's my world. Love my kids, and I'll do anything to be with my kids. I love them. When I'm at home, I make sure that I'm doing cooking. Usually on the weekend, I'm responsible for cooking. I'm also responsible for other things within the household, making sure that everything is done okay, and we have a good relationship going. Now, if my wife thinks of all of this as it's not enough and it's in a negative way, and she decides she wants to leave, that's okay. The unfortunate part is that she might actually she was probably going to meet somebody, but that person that she meets is not going to be as dedicated, as devoted as I am. And that's me knowing my worth. Then the likelihood of getting somebody like that is probably close to impossible. Now, I'm not talking about the washing the dishes and so on. She has to date down in order to find somebody who's going to be equivalent in devotion and so on. But in terms of income, there's probably likelihoods that she's not going to meet somebody the same. Now, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm not, but I'm just saying there's certain in order for her to have the same type of relationship that she has right now, she will have to make a lot of sacrifices in order to get that. So now, my point being is that your worth within this relationship is pretty high. Like what you bring to the table is massive when it comes to a relationship. So you have to start seeing it as such, because when you don't, what tends to happen is that you tend you tend to make sacrifices. So for example, when you are trying to move the needle in terms of changing a sexless relationship, what then tends to happen is that she will put up a resistance, and then you sort of regress back to a forced celibacy situation. Now, I've already realized that I've already spoken for over 8 minutes, and instead of me plowing on and then making this episode very long, we've talked about knowing your self-worth as a first step with this, you know, overcoming forced celibacy. So I think I'm going to knock it on the head here, and then tomorrow and Friday we'll talk about step 2 and step 3, which is not selling yourself cheap. Step 2, because once you understand your value, how do you communicate that and not sell yourself cheap? So we'll go dive a little bit deeper into that, and then I think by Friday we'll be talking about step number 3, how to not weaponize it. Because if you understand your value, again, some of you guys, because you've got so much resentment pent up, you want to find a way of torturing the poor woman, because now you understand your value. You're gonna, so we'll also talk about not doing that and how to not do that, because really, when it comes to changing a sexless relationship, there's a lot of complexity about it. It's like you managing your own emotions, and then you also trying to use historical data to be cautious on your next move. But at the same time, when you don't make a move, then nothing actually happens. So there's a few things that we need to discuss around this, especially when it comes to really knowing your worth and then moving the needle in terms of towards a changing the sexless relationship. So thank you very much, guys, for listening, and look forward to diving deeper into this. the movement against forced celibacy. I'll call it part one, knowing your worth, and then we'll dive into part two and part three, and then hopefully by the time we get to the weekend, you have an understanding of how to see yourself within the relationship and see your value, and then hopefully by the next time you have the conversation, you have a better way of articulating what you want from the relationship, because this is one of the things that most guys do not understand. They just the only thing that they're just a side note, one thing that when you sit down somebody and want to talk to them about the fact that you're in a sexless relationship, one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they talk about how it makes them feel. Like, that is, you've boiled it down to just feelings. And again, it's so much easier to dismiss your feelings, because if she cared about how you felt, she'll be having sex with you. Just put that out there. So you telling her how it makes you feel is absolute fucking ludicrous. Like, seriously, it's absolutely fucking ludicrous. So you have to bring something more than that. Just my rant over there. All right. So we'll catch up tomorrow and we'll go a little bit deeper into, not selling yourself cheap. So thank you very much. Take it easy.